media feeds, this latest revival of David Mamet Oleanna, now at the Arts Theatre in London, seems to have reignited the fiery passion people hold for both the playwright and this play in particular. So what's it all about? We have Carol, played by Rosie Sheehy, a somewhat shy, anxious student who has met with her professor John in his office. Carol's terrified of being flunked. She wants to know how to improve her latest grade, which seems to be lower than expected and hoped for. She talks of doing exactly as she's told in classes and of being unable to understand anything that's being said around her. John, on the other hand, is the professor here, played by Jonathan Slinger. He's distracted by his upcoming tenure and the associated property purchase that comes with it. Tenure being an American thing that happens to professors that they all seem to look for in plays. He talks of Carol being a student who reminds him of himself. He proclaims them equals. He breaks down accepted structural norms, and he shares somewhat rambling personal stories. He ends up offering to do more one-to-one sessions with her, getting rid of her grade, starting again because he likes her. What happens then is the events unfurling, as what's happened in the first meeting leads to accusations of inappropriate behaviour by John, sexism, elitism, and ultimately rape. When Oleanna premiered in 1993 at London's Royal Court Theatre, a year after it was on Broadway, it was seen as a response to a political correctness gone mad, the headline that was all over the Daily Mail and other tabloids at the time. And the original John, played by David Suchet, spoke of audience members telling him they wanted to stand up and shout, "Kill the bitch," in the third act. Reports of couples, heterosexual couples, ferociously arguing as each sex took a different side, fighting their opposing views as they left the theatre. And the power of the script is in the forced proximity that Mamet places the two characters, both resolute in the righteousness of their opposing, unswerving beliefs. As an audience, we're witness to a war that's non-negotiable, and it takes place over 3 short acts. It's not merely a battle of the sexes, it's too easy. It's a battle, it's a war for the rights assigned to class, to privilege, to authority. It's a war to reclaim power. It's incendiary stuff. Except here, it isn't. For this production, director Lucy Bailey has opted to underplay the emotions that you might expect from such passionate argument. So instead of a fight for power, we have more of a light rally of opinions. She has decided to get the actors to ignore the guidance that's provided by the hyper-realism of the script. Mamet writes lines that cut over each other, that interrupt, that repeat, that divert. He puts in comments that are seemingly thrown away, that return spear-like and pierce their initial self-aggrandizing pomposity. He writes as a stream of consciousness, and as such, you flow between the actors as though almost improvised. Here, lines are delivered precisely to the beat. They are less interrupted, more tightly cueing each other. It's really very clear in the interruptive phone calls that puncture the first and second act that John takes. We only hear John's side, and their one-sided nature should reveal more about him to us than his self-proclamations ever could. As he listens to what's being said to him that we can't hear, for all we see here now is the actor pausing, counting before his next line comes in, rather than waiting for the unheard response. It's also when Slinger later cites John's words, reading from the statements being written against him, he does so in a way that sounds not dissimilar to when he originally said them off the cuff. It's a shame because the case against and for John is that his prejudices and his self-importance are inherent. It's why he feels so affronted by the accusations made against him. When the words are clearly rehearsed, as they are here, it just seems to fall flat.
Nothing ever seems to go further than the first read.
Anger simmers but never boils. Painful self-revelations never seem to hurt. Disbelief only seems like mild surprise. Stage directions are very scant. They're described as a chair, two chairs, a desk, and a telephone. It gives an excuse to the invasions of space that John continually makes that are, in his mind, acceptably paternal rather than predatorily sexual. Bailey seems uncomfortable to move away from directing by numbers. She appears to fixate on making sure the actors fill the space and punctuates every few pages with a bit about a stage circling. You can almost count the blocking as she traverses the area in that way no one ever does in real life. Start centre stage, head up stage right, curl round down stage left, pause, do some wistful middle distance staring, like people do when they have secrets and stuff. Then there's the sofa. Been to the desk too long? Why not take a shifty over to the sofa? Why? Well, hopefully you'll make up for the lack of pace change. What is it with the sofa anyway? Is the provision of sofa a rite of passage I don't know about in American education? It's given just before tenure. Here you have a sofa. Or is it just a glaringly obvious dumbass metaphor for the casting couch? You know, in case we forget the whole Harvey Weinstein metaphor. I don't know, you decide. Act 2 is where John shows his true colours, arguably. It's here we see how dismissive he is of other people's views simply for not being his own. It's here we see Carol gain her voice. Her growing confidence means she won't be being spoken over so easily anymore. But she still finds self-belief difficult. It's where the actors come to their fore, but why bother with all that acting shit? It's easier to use visual cues to show the balance of power shifting instead. Dress Carol more smartly, have her sit with a better posture, and make John slightly more hunched. Job done. It continues into the third act, where John, having slept in his office for 2 nights, is all unkempt hair and wrongly buttoned shirt, mismatched, and sits almost fetally. Meanwhile, Carol is now in a smartly fitted top and black heels, with her head thrown back as she strides purposefully, though needlessly, around the entire room. This is some comment on physical appearance and confidence. Making her look like a sitcom businesswoman sits uncomfortably with me. It feels particularly derivative in a play with themes like Oleanna. The lack of emotional depth shown on stage douses any of the fiery passion that the audience may have brought in with them. In place of anger at or support for the comments either character makes, there are occasional giggles. Choosing which character to side with is less important than choosing which tube line to take home. So it's unsurprising that by the time of the final argument, when it escalates into violence, nobody in the audience flinches. In what is perhaps the least believable fight I have witnessed on a professional stage for a good while, the actors dance around the stage using the whole area naturally, preempting slaps, throwing props that weren't in the way in the first place, and shaking their bodies as though participating in some silent disco. The program names Philippe Dorleans as the fight director, but no biography is given, so we don't know whether it's just a bad day for him or her. Go back to the big questions at the beginning. Is Mamet sexist? Does Oleanna attempt to legitimize the male viewpoint of self-appointed privilege? Is cancel culture the only way we can resolve decades of imbalance? Whatever your views on any of those questions, this passionless production of a play that creates so much passion does nothing to help any of these arguments.